question that arises in our minds as Christians and even the unbeliever's mind is, why does God allow evil? And we actually get an answer for this in Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 through 30, where Jesus gives the parable of the wheat and tares and gives it in terms that we can understand and relate to with agriculture. And the point is then to make a judgment claim on what we would feel about that agricultural situation there, and then transfer that judgment that we've made onto something that we've been spiritually blind to before, which would be the kingdom of God. And we're lucky in this parable that Jesus actually gives the interpretation of it in Matthew 13, verses 36 through 43, where he tells us what the spiritual meaning of things are. And so he gives that example of how at the beginning of creation, God created very good seed of speaking of humanity and those that believed in the righteousness of God and who he is, and they dwelled upon the earth. But then the enemy came, the devil came, and sowed seeds of the evil one. And so the question arises to God in this parable is, are you going to remove the evil from this world? The same question that's being posed to us today in our culture and even in our heart of hearts that we ask sometimes. And the surprising answer comes when the owner of the field says, no, leave them there. And it comes a surprise to us in a spiritual sense of, God, why are you saying that you're going to allow the evil to stay? And that happens in verse 29, where that transition happens there. But the judgment call by the farmer in that parable is saying we would uproot the weed or the wheat if we were to remove the weeds. So we're going to let that stay until the end of the harvest. And the application then there in the spiritual realm in 36 and 43 is that idea then of it would destroy the faith of the believer if he was to remove the wicked of this world. So the attack that we have against God, of God should remove the evil from this world, is actually the worst case scenario for us, or the worst thing that God could possibly do. And so that causes us to question, why is that? How is it going to destroy our faith more if God was to remove the wicked from this world? We get an answer of that when we look at the difference in the definition of what we as human beings consider as evil and what God considers as evil. And we have to remember that we have to work off of God's definitions and not our own. When I think of the word traveling, I don't think of anything that has to do with bouncing a ball while moving. But if I was to play a basketball game, then I am obligated to follow the rules and the definitions of that game. And traveling speaks about bouncing the basketball as you move across the court. And so it's the same working in God's kingdom. We might not, as humans, have the same definition of evil as what God would, but because we live in His created universe, we have to follow His definitions. And God tells us in Romans 3:10, none is righteous, no, not one. And so, could God have removed the evil from this world and created a different world where there was no wickedness? Yeah, but the problem is you and I wouldn't be a part of it then, because no one's righteous, no, not one. Just like the parable says, it would uproot the wheat, those that are the believers, that are the sons of righteousness, if He was to remove the wicked, because we would actually have to be removed as well. Now, we sometimes can get taken back by that and say, well, we're forgetting about God's foreknowledge. He's going to know the people that are going to choose Him, and they would be able to stay on this earth. But you still would have the same problem with evil then, because all of us have done evil before we became Christians. And even as Christians, we do things that are considered evil. And again, we're working off of God's definition of what is evil. We have a promise in this parable that's of great joy to us, because the parable tells us, yes, at this time there is this evil, and there's two applications to what this parable is trying to say. To the wicked, it's warning them that right now everything seems fine and dandy. You're growing in the same field as the wheat is, and in ways that you're bearing more fruit, you might be prospering better, but there's going to be a judgment that comes. And the end of this parable says that the weeds will be bundled together and burned, and then the wheat is going to be put together into the barn, which speaks of God's kingdom. And so there's going to be a separation from that. And so there's that warning of going, things seem fine now, but there will be a day of judgment coming. For the believer, it's a promise that God will do something to keep enduring. That yes, at this time there seems to be no distinction between the wicked and the righteous, but God promises there is a day coming where a distinction will be made and evil will be removed from this earth, and it'll be back to the original creation that's spoken about in Revelation 21, verses 1 through 8, where we're told in the new heavens and the new earth that will be created, there'll be no more tears, no more death, sorrow, no crying, no pain, no wickedness. And the former things have passed away. So all the things that we see as a result of man's rebellion from God, of the curse, are going to be done away with. And we're going to go back to the way God originally intended it in the Genesis account before humanity rebelled against God.